Testing, 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 testing. Did you mute it again?
You want to do that?
Yeah, are you muted or no? Testing, 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 testing.
Did all those come through? Okay.
You can mute it again.
Yep.
I'm just gonna press the sound.
Cody, are we ready? Okay. Excellent. Hi, everyone. The meeting of the Fort Getty Ad Hoc Committee for Thursday, March 5th will come to order. Roll call vote. Roll call, right? John Potter,
Sure.
Cassandra Webb. Present. Bill Sammons
Here.
and Richard Smith.
Here.
And the chair is here. And then in terms of ex officio members, Ray DeFalco,
Here.
Jim Hegney,
Here.
and Nancy Latendre. Is she here? Oh, hi, Nancy. Great. The first item is, and just like last time, we will have a meeting and then we will move to the workshop portion. So the first item is old business and the agenda item is community survey results review. So a number of committee members asked for some disaggregation by the survey results. So I don't know if anyone wants to talk about those at all. I looked through some. I didn't find anything all that. I had assumptions going in, but they didn't bear out. So nothing was particularly different for me, but I don't know.
The questions I had asked, they were all within percentage points. There was no radical difference in any of the segments I asked for.
Great.
So I had requested that under age 55, so 54 and younger, which represents 20% of all the respondents, be available to us to see if there's any difference in the ages. And those are the people with kids. But their responses were similar to the main responses. They're happy with the park experience. 81% indicated they were satisfied or very satisfied. They're also happy with hiking trails, beaches. They had no opinion about the fishing dock, fire pit, handicap accessibility, or boat ramp. They were kind of divided on the historical structures. The amenities to improve, again, restrooms, boat ramp, historical structures, fishing dock. And then their focus on improving going forward were community activities, 85% strongly and somewhat prefer, nature preserve, farmers markets, restrooms, passive recreation, open space, trail systems, trash cans. And then they also indicated it was important to generate revenue. 39% said it was essential, 26% said very important. And then regarding new revenue generating ideas, somewhat important, 40%, 24% said not important at all. And then they indicated mostly to maintain the RV camping, maintain tent camping, and maintain pavilion events. So very similar.
Anyone else?
Yes,
Yeah.
I had asked for an analysis of looking at question 19 versus 24, specifically those who wanted to maintain or increase RVs. I was curious to know how do they feel about the park as public land? And it turns out, I was actually pretty astonished that their highest request for the town to invest in was restrooms, which I think is true of pretty much everyone. But that was 80%. 75% were in favor, either strongly or somewhat prefer nature preserves.
Mm-hmm.
65% open space, 77% increase to the trail system. So there's a lot of support
Mm-hmm.
on even those that want to maintain the RVs.
John.
I asked about how the barriers to entry were perceived by people who don't visit Fort Getty regularly. And a couple things. One, the sequence of responses, right? The sequence of frequencies was the same as the general public at large and the same as the group who visit more often. The biggest difference for people who rarely / never visit in the summer was, these are statistically different responses. Park facilities are too crowded, 10% versus 7.4. Do not feel welcome, 10% versus 5. Or no resident recreation pass, 9 versus 3. For the rarely / never visit in other seasons, it's a spread that's much more like the visit more often people. If you if you analyze the free text responses, the free text responses around rarely/never visit in the summer has almost everything to do with it being crowded or people not feeling welcome. Occasionally, dogs on leashes. In the winter, it's almost predominantly dogs off leashes. So, I mean, I thought that was different in intensity, but not in sequence of concern. Yeah. And so to be honest, it's not as if we can come up with something that's going to necessarily convince or rather make the park attractive to a lot of non-visitors today. However, I think that we'll talk about this later, but I think that my working hypothesis, the use of landscaping and shrubbery to try to better delineate space for different uses could be quite helpful.
Mhm.
So that's it.
Yeah, I reported, and a couple of you were there, Richard was there, and John was there when I reported to the town hall. And in preparing for that presentation, which was really just a progress report on where we'd been, including a summary of the survey results, it really did, in some of the analysis, came clear that for the people that do want to maintain some camping and pavilion use, but also, you know, to your point, Bill, that there's a lot of things they want as well, that it really is, and maybe other people have already thought of this or think of Fort Getty this way, but it dawned on me that it really is, or a framing could be that it's a community park that happens to have campground as part of the space and not a campground that people can go visit, you know? So I think that that slight framing at least changed my thinking about how, and you just articulated it, that there might be some things that we can do that really underscore that so that hopefully it is more welcoming. It does have enhanced amenities and, you know, maybe makes everybody a little happier. So.
So to your point, I was going to bring this up during the design, during your points about how we principles for discussion. But I think we kind of need to go back a little bit and define what the park is, who it serves, what its purpose is. Right now, if you go do a Google search, the first thing that pops up is the Fort Getty town site, and it says RV camping at Fort Getty. And so Fort Getty is then already framed as RV camping at Fort Getty. But then there's a description that says Fort Getty is a town-owned facility located at the terminus of Fort Getty Road and is 41 acres in size. Fort Getty is primarily recreational vehicle campground that also contains a tent camping area. The park itself has old fortifications, a rocky beach, a public boat ramp, and a dock. The Kitwright walking trail was completed along Fox Hill Marsh in the winter of 2000. In addition, the Boy Scouts constructed a wildlife observation platform that was funded by the Rotary Club in 2000. And then it goes on. But near the end, it talks about the boat launch. So that's one part. And then the next is Wikipedia. Fort Getty is a town park in Jamestown, Rhode Island on Connecticut Island and Narragansett Bay. From 1900 to World War II, it was a military fort. The town of Jamestown later received the property and opened it as a park, primarily a campground. And then there is a link at the bottom of that cites that, and it goes to jamestownri.gov/town departments, parks, rec, Fort Getty, and it doesn't work. So there's no like description of the park. I feel like there's like an identity issue or a branding issue. And so maybe before we get into, we should get into the principles for discussion, these guiding principles, but I think we could back up a little bit and do a vision statement, mission statement, primary purpose kind of concept for the park.
It's great. Yeah, I think that's right on in terms of identity. That's probably a lot of what, you know, some of the tension and polarization is because people have their own branding or identity. And and it hasn't ever really been made clear.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Great, anything else on that? All right, so next item is new business, and the first item is a benchmark report from member Cassandra West.
Okay, so just give a little background. I had started in November, December, doing the campground pricing. So I updated the pricing list that we had received from the Parks and Rec Department. And in doing that, we started talking about the differences and similarities in parks. And so now I've done some more research. I interviewed the Will Cronin at the town of Middletown to learn more about Second Beach Family Campground. And so I will discuss all that. So overall, no two campgrounds are identical, and direct comparisons are very difficult. And Fort Getty, it's in itself very unique. But the purpose of this benchmarking is to help us learn from the assets and limitations of these other campgrounds and then apply what's appropriate to our work and recommendations at Fort Getty. I would like us to think about what we're offering. And, the question is it the right experience? Is it aligned with what the park users would like and what residents also in the town are looking for us to provide? And so based on the park survey, respondents are satisfied overall with park experience. 93% responded satisfied or very satisfied, but they would like to see the town focus on improving the restrooms, RV camping experience, which in the open-ended questions is primarily the electrical system and the nature preserve. And so I see that this means that we are providing a camping experience that aligns with what the campers are looking for. The resident survey to me communicated that we want to maintain the revenues, but just not make it a priority or focal point of the park overall. So there are some lessons in this benchmarking work I think we can learn from and integrate into our final recommendations. And one point I'd like to highlight, though, is that we should consider how to keep it simple administratively. We have a small staff who work and manage the campground. And, this could help free them up to put on more community events. That was indicated in the survey, too. We have an allocation of resources issue to consider. And so staff efforts do reflect on the focus of the park. So this will help contain our costs while maintaining our revenue as well. It does not need to be a complex operation, and we can learn from the pricing models and ways that others have managed their campground revenues. So there are some tools I'll discuss too. The state uses an online reservation system to manage theirs called Reserve America, and the Second Beach Family Campground has transitioned to a seasonal only model, and they do not have tent camping. And that has made it more simple. So first, we did a site visit to Fisherman's Memorial Campground in Narragansett. It's a state-owned. It's very large with 182 sites. And then I personally interviewed Will Cronin, who's the operations and facilities manager at the town of Middletown, who manages the applications, reservations, and overall logistics for Second Beach Family Campground. I just want to note that he pointed out to me the importance of the word family in the name of the campground. So the language that we use reflects our work and how we view things. The Second Beach Family Campground is smaller with 43 sites. So just those two, our biggest comparisons are very different. Some other campgrounds we looked at for benchmarking that were included in the pricing document is Newport RV Park, which is located in the Melville Recreation Area. It's owned by the town of Portsmouth and run by a private entity, Camp Rhodey. It has the highest price, which was $12,000 about for the 2026 season. The pricing does vary based on peak season versus non-peak season, holiday weekends, and folk/jazz festival weekends. And they have minimum stay requirements. Stays of 15 days or longer are billed for metered electricity. And this also, it came to me as I was preparing for this, that this is also a campground that's within a town recreation area. So I found this map and I confirmed with the town clerk in Portsmouth that this is accurate, even though it's dated 2016. And so the campground is located it's its own unit within the park, and there are trail systems around it. There's a dog park. They have an amphitheater. And so I did ask the town clerk about how it's used, and she said it's accessible, like the town uses it. You don't have, townspeople use it. You don't have to go through the campground to get there, or they used to have a tent camping section, like in this lower corner between Bradford and Sullivan Drive down here. But they no longer have tent camping. They've removed it. So now that's just camping.
Did they say why?
No. So the town like has a contract, which I did share. I did get a hold of that and share that back in December. But they have a contract with this private entity, Camp Rhodey. And so Camp Rhodey just manages the campground and makes the decisions about what to do. And so the town doesn't really know or get involved in that part of it.
Are they the campground that has like an open trailer that they rent out? kind of
Yes, so they
Airbnb?
have Airstreams. Yeah. So they're 5 miles from Sandy Point Beach. They have 30 and 50 amp electrical service, cable, free Wi-Fi, free hot showers, the dog park right next to the campground. But they're the most expensive. So, and then in the pricing document, I did include the campsite map, but you can look that up on Newport RV Park's website. And right, then they also have the Airstreams that are rented or managed through an Airbnb system too. Okay, now another comparison was Warden Family Campground, again, family in the name, in Wakefield, Rhode Island. This is a family-owned facility. The seasonal stays are priced at $4,400, and short-term stay is $60 a day. They have basic utility hookups and limited amenities. So that one is not near a beach. Then there's Ashway RV Resort, which is in Bradford, Rhode Island. It's part of Zeeman RV Resorts. It's one of the nation's largest private owners and operators of manufactured home communities that owns and operates over 40 properties across Florida, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Maine, and Rhode Island. Their seasonal rate is $6,800, and amenities include the heated pool, adult hot tub, splash pad, dog park, laundry, camp store, full hookups. A little more amenities available, but they also not near a beach. So when I looked at all of this, I thought the most comparable campground to Fort Getty is Second Beach Family Campground. They're both municipally owned and managed. They both have similar locations in close proximity to the beach, and they both offer open space. They have similar amenities. But there are some big differences. Site size and design. Fort Getty sites are about 1,700 square feet, whereas Second Beach average about 700 square feet. So they're all packed in and really close together. And then the pricing, they have higher rates than we do, and they did experiment with adjusting their pricing, but they did not seem to account for their wait list in their pricing decisions. So I think that's something we should think about, is ensuring that our pricing is similar to other similar campgrounds, but also taking into account our wait list, because that indicates the demand for the space. And I think keeping our pricing short does shortchange our taxpayers. They did transition during COVID to a seasonal only model that I'll talk about later. And so they removed short-term ones, and it's made it easier to manage while not affecting their overall revenue. When we visited Fisherman's, we saw the site design and layout was very different than ours. We saw both spacious sites and vegetation that provides privacy and borders between them. And then in another area, we also saw the open land and campsites. Their priority is making the space and sites available to more people in season, and that's reflected in their shorter stay policy. And their pricing for sites varies based on residency first, and then based on amenities at each site. So if there's a water view, it costs more. And this is not specific to Fisherman's. This is the state park pricing model. Newport RV Park as I mentioned, is a town-owned campground within a town-owned park. The difference is that it's managed by a private entity. And then they do have the hiking trails, dog park, amphitheater, and parking as reflected in this map. And then the nicer amenities. I'll just quickly review Fisherman's. We all went, but their whole season goes from April 10th to October 30th this year. They have a peak, a non-peak season. And then their amenities are 30 and 50 amp electric, water, sewer at the newer sites, recreational courts, open fields, a playground, bathrooms with showers, a kayak launch, fire pits. Their length of stay policies, as I mentioned, limit long-term occupancy and ensure turnover. They use Reserve America, an online system to handle their reservations. So they have 182 sites in total. Our older RV sites are larger in size and there's separation between them, and the newer sites are more compact with less spacing, and all the sites are nearly flat. They do not permit semi-permanent structures like decks and sheds. And there was a typo in my document, and so I'd like to correct it now, but they do not have tent camping or, and they do not have cabins at this campground. There's no seasonal carryover. Each camping season begins with a new registration process. No security deposit is required to reserve a site. Each stay includes one complimentary use of the dump station, with additional uses costing $20. They allow up to 2 vehicles at each site, and that includes a drivable RV as one vehicle. All visitors to the RV sites are required to pay an $8 entrance fee, and overnight visitor parking is not permitted. Staff coverage is provided until midnight during operating periods. The campground is typically booked to capacity from late June through August, with occupancy split between RI residents and non-residents. Events at the campground are minimal, with the exception of a farmer's market that's held near the entrance and kind of outside of the campground that we saw. So you don't enter the campground to access the farmer's market. And then the pricing is determined by residency, so not resident versus non-resident rates, and then by site type and amenities available. And pricing is listed on the state website as a daily rate, but I calculated what it would be so we could compare it directly to our 16-week season for 2026. So a tier 3 site, which does not have any hookups and are the least expensive to compare to Fort Getty seasons, would be $2,016 for a resident and $4,032 for a non-resident. The tier 1 sites, which have waterfront views and full hookups, are more expensive. And so to compare to the Fort Getty season, a resident rate is $3,136 and a non-resident is $6,160. Okay. And so Second Beach Family Campground, I feel like we have a lot to learn from here. I was very excited to do the interview and to understand how they run their campground. They have a lot of creative and innovative ideas. So I'd like to share those. So their season runs May 1st through Columbus Day, which will be October 12th this year. They have 43 sites, each averaging about 700 square feet. And so some of the feedback from that they shared with me is that people feel like they're squeezed in like sardines. But the trailer size is limited due to site dimensions. They have allowed larger trailers or RVs in that would take up 2 sites, but that's on a case-by-case basis and space availability wise. So they're trying to figure out how to do that going forward as the RVs get bigger in size. Their utilities included in the seasonal rental rate include electricity, with all sites providing 30 amp and 50 amp service, water and sewer hookups. Other amenities are toilets, hot showers, Wi-Fi, coin-operated laundry facilities, and an umbrella-style clothesline. Yeah. On-site campground management and walking access to second and third beaches. They do not allow tent camping or pets. Their seasonal rate is $7,955. Campers are typically the same individuals from year to year, with only one Middletown resident using the campground. Existing campers receive the first right of refusal to return each season. They do have a very long wait list, which is about a 5 to 10 year wait. Likely close to 100 people. Ours, I think, is 20 people. Is that right? Mm-hmm.
Do you want questions as you go, or do you want to keep going.
Yeah, you can provide question.
I'm just curious about that. We heard a lot in the survey on both sides of the issue of the policy of bringing people back these long time. Is it exclusive or is it the kind of community that we want to create? And I just wonder if Middletown talked about the policy and why their policy is what it is in terms of having people have the,
Yeah,
right
I didn't ask that and he didn't say. We can follow up with him with
Yeah,
these
I would like
specific
to know.
questions. It does seem that because they're maintaining that community like we have now. So, I mean, the fact that they have the wait list, it's just as the community, the people who are current seasonal users are phase out and they replace it. So, but it's really interesting that they have such a long wait. Mhm.
So you alluded to the tightness of the space being a pain point, but did you get a sense of what do those campers complain about?
I was thinking, what's driving their decision to keep them small? Yeah.
Well, they have limited space. If you look at the maps, and we also have the survey from them that they shared of the land survey, which was excellent. They shared so much with us. They have a very limited space, and just all the space is taken up with the trailers. So
Yeah, I can imagine. So if it wasn't that, I mean, they seem to have a ton of amenities.
Uh-huh.
They seem to have a lot of the things that both our campers and our residents seem to want. Is there something else that now that they've got all that they talk about? I'm just curious.
no, just like responding to camper feedback. So that was, and the feedback that he shared with me from last year was the laundry facilities and then also the showers. But they also have limitations from CRMC as we do. They're close to the beach. I didn't put that in here, I just remembered. But they have a building that is in the front of their facility that is from the 1970s. And so when he was describing, even locating the shower is an issue. And, so they have restrictions like we have as well and limitations like we have.
Do they have tent camping? Is the showers for tent campers or?
They don't have tent
No.
camping. It's just RVs. Yeah. So during COVID, they transitioned to a seasonal only model and eliminated short-term stays. They do not call them transient because that can connote people who lack a fixed permanent resident. So they did call them short-term stays. The shift to seasonal only has simplified operations by reducing the administrative workload and reducing the need to fill the vacancies throughout the season. Because I guess that was a lot of work trying to, fill the spaces as you go. So we also talked about like finances and pricing. And so this came up when I was updating the pricing list that the rec department had provided me with. It looked like their pricing had gone down. And so the story behind that is that, first of all, the decisions for pricing are made with the town's, in collaboration with the town's finance department. And the rate was $5,600 for many years. And then they increased it by $1,000 annually over a 3-year period, eventually reaching $8,600. Then camper feedback indicated it was too high, so they lowered it to its current rate, which is $7,955. They probably could have kept it at $8,600 considering their wait list, but it does seem like the priority is on those current campers. So, and as I mentioned, they're considering adjusting the price in the future to reflect RV size similar to boat storage fees because RV sites, the RVs are getting bigger and their site space is limited. So they do require, I thought this was very interesting. They require a deposit to secure your seasonal reservation. It's due by late February. The remaining balance is due by the April prior to the season start. And so they collect revenues in advance, and this allows the town to allocate funds within the current fiscal year. The campground revenues are deposited into a beach enterprise fund, which supports beach-related expenses with surplus funds going into the general fund. In addition, $5 of each beach parking pass that they sell is allocated to a capital project fund. And so this has supported improvements like a recent $2 million parking lot repaving project, and it eliminated the need to have the project paid through bonds. They had the funds.
Do you have much more?
Hmm.
Do you have more to do you have a lot?
Just a little bit more, yeah. And so then this falls under the Town Beach Department. Mr. Cronin oversees applications, reservations, and overall logistics. There is a site manager who's present on site during the season, and they receive a free campsite and a $12,000 stipend. And then there's an assistant manager who receives a free site only. So this allows them to have coverage, 24-hour coverage at the campground. Right. And then the recent improvements they've made were, as I mentioned, in response to camper feedback, the installation of an outdoor shower, and then the addition of coin-operated laundry facilities. They very creatively did this with a landscaper's trailer. They outfitted it with washers and dryers. They put lighting, flooring, stairs, and then they put this into, this occupies a dedicated site at the campground. So, and it's been a very popular amenity. All right, that's all.
One quick question. What happens outside of the camping season?
For them? Oh, I didn't ask that. Yeah, I think it's just empty, right? Yeah, I would think. But
Yeah, I just went over and visited it, and it's, it's got the gates closed.
Mhm.
It's all paved with a green area with picnic tables.
right, so in the
So
center.
the
Yeah.
RVs just pull up alongside the green space
Mhm.
on the pavement, and it's pretty full.
Mhm. I'd encourage you, though, if you have further questions, to get in contact with Will Cronin. He was very nice and kind and helpful to us with.
He really likes talking to you.
Oh. Yeah.
Cassie, we're really so appreciative of this work. I know it's a lot of work and I know you have other things to do. So really, really helpful. And what it underscores for us is we've focused a lot upon the infrastructure and the, how we lay out the space. And we're so grateful to have Eric and Beta here to help us with that. But a large part of what we have to think about is policies. A lot of the feedback we received in the surveys relate to policies, how we support camping, how we support other amenities there. So this is very instructive, but I guess we should just all think about the things that, to your point, what kind of campground do we want to be and what are the policies that make that possible? Yeah, so I think in a future meeting very soon, we'll have to focus on that. We'll all have to bring ideas.
And so the other thing I've thought about in comparing these campgrounds is, and gets to the question of like what happens when the campers aren't there, is that these are all campgrounds. The only one that is most similar, like space-wise, is the Melville campground, which is a campground within a park. And so I think that affects how we view like the space and the use too. But
Does Millview have campers there in the wintertime, RVs?
I don't think so. I didn't ask that though. Yeah. We could follow up about that though. It would be interesting to see how they use this space in the winter. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. We'll be coming back to all of this. Okay, so the next item is principles. We talked early on in this process about the importance of having some guiding principles and clarifying our goals as a committee, and made the decision deliberately to wait until we had the information from the survey to inform our thinking about what those principles might be. So I took a stab at thinking about those, and obviously these are the ones I presented are through my own lens, and I don't expect that they would just be adopted, but I share them for feedback and for conversation, both, just framing principles and then the specific goals. And I included in our materials, I'm sure you've all seen them from before, but the goals from 1994 and from 2004 processes. So just here for conversation.
Well, first, let me say I thought they were excellent. And thank you very much for taking a cut at it. I know you'll want to get to the question about add something historic here, but I just wrote some more question marks next to it. The and number 4, you talk about let revenue serve the park, not drive it, and then elaborate on that a bit. The final sentence says revenue decisions should always be weighed against their impact on other values, such as the community experience. And I don't have any problem with that text, but I did want to make sure I understood that we had a chance to discuss what that actually means. I mean, I think I've commented in the past that an awful lot of the feedback that we got through the survey was people want more community activities.
Mhm.
And I think I've also suggested in the past that community activities are something that you cannot really write into a land use plan. And when we contemplate community activities, it strikes me that we need to, I mean, obviously you can provide infrastructure for community activities, but it seems to me that thinking about community activities, there was at least one person who wrote a letter that said, we got a lot of community activities. They're just not there.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I feel that I'm sort of wondering whether that line meant the community experience at the park or the community experience at large, or back to the vision thing of the park. Because if we're talking about the vision thing for the park, I'm completely on board with that comment and that value, or rather principle. But I'm trying to make sure that we don't assume that the Fort Getty Ad Hoc Committee is thinking about community activities for Cononicut Island, right? Because that's really somebody else's. It needs to be managed holistically.
Yeah. What I meant there, these are all related to the park. These are all related to Fort Getty specifically. And what I meant there is we might make a lot of money if we had a carnival for a week. But I think that would have a large impact and, you know, may not be something that is welcome, or a music festival, say. So it might bring in a lot of money, you know, bringing back the time trials. Some of us might love that if it brought a lot of money, but for some people it might be just a, you know, terrible environmental impact, you know, not great for the neighbors in that area. So just thinking about that, this was, you know, very much. And to your point, John, you've said this before, community activities in Jamestown and certainly at Fort Getty, there's a lot of reminiscing about Family Day. And Family Day back in the day was the result of a very active Lions Club, Rotary Club. So, you know, the idea, I don't know if some of the thinking in the survey results is the town should be doing more planning, and they already do. But, you know, a lot of these things are actually generated by third parties. Yeah. Yeah,
Yes,
Bill.
picking up on your point, Marissa, in terms of revenue driving use of the park, I totally agree. People have mentioned, well, how about a wedding venue? Well, if you really played that out, and we had weddings there every, you know, Friday, Saturday, whatever, it would inundate the park. We would definitely have to be planning that out. So revenue is not the be all and end all. We have to think about how to use it. But picking up on John's point, and not to jump around, but under goals, goal 1 is to improve park facilities and amenities. And I just thought maybe tacking at the end of that and facilitate community programming events could be helpful, because I agree. We are an ad hoc committee. We are not planning out community events, but as we map out the park and how it can be used, we should be looking as a goal, facilitating the fact that, you know, we've got a pavilion, and others can plan community events there. How do we facilitate, make it better? And just one other point in terms of the historic, well, actually two things that I might add to that first the principles in terms of Fort Getty's distinctive character. One would be to put in, after preserve the park's unbuilt, open, natural, and scenic qualities, protect and highlight historic batteries. And then also favor native plantings as buffers between uses. Again, reflecting a point that John earlier made. And
So that would be at the end of number 1.
yeah,
I worry about the word protect.
yeah. So, and that
How about
may-
consider?
I'm not married to that, but I do think that we need to take a close look at the historic batteries. figure out,
Yeah.
Can they be used? How do we keep them from crumbling further? And how do we highlight the historic nature of them? Maybe through signage.
Mm-hmm. So highlight the historic nature of the park, or the historic origins, or the park's historic,
Yeah.
the park's history.
Getting into the workshop, but
Yeah.
things that can be done with it.
The only reason I say I'm concerned about protect is that I don't know how people construe protect.
Yeah.
And if we are thinking about doing things or recommending something along the lines of what we saw at Fisherman's Memorial, to have that access at the top that Eric has pointed out, I don't know if that's counter to protect. I just don't know.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other thoughts on this?
Pretty much everything you wrote and anything you want to do is going to contradict something else in the survey. You talked about revenues, and John and Bill brought it up. If you want to get more revenues, then the people will be upset because there's more people. It's now more crowded on days they want to use it. So we have a tough choice on how to balance, preserve the open space. And a lot of people want it just for Jamestown, but it's an open park and the public's invited. You change it a lot and make it really nice. It's not just going to be Jamestowners going there. I don't care what we do. The nicer it gets, the more off-islanders are going to show up. And then it's going to reflect in the next survey that people are upset that there's more off-islanders taking space, parking, and time there. So everything we do is going to be a conflict to something else that's wanted. And same with the preserve the land and the views.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say, or the way the survey questions were written, it can be taken as keep it the way they are, which is the way I kind of take it, is we are not going to make it any different than what exists now. It didn't sound like we were going to retreat, open it all up, make it a natural park. So whatever we do going forward is going to contradict all of that preserve, protect. And those had the highest percentages. All of those were 90%. They want to preserve and protect all 3 of those columns. So we do have a dilemma because everything we say is going to contradict everything the people said they wanted. So how do
I
the
think
balance is the
that's
part?
part of that is why I thought it would be important to just have some principles that guide.
I agree,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying we're not going to make everybody happy with whatever principles we have put out there.
Well, I think this is a shared space and it's all about like finding balance and compromise. And we're trying our good faith effort at that. So,
I'm just saying that's going to be very difficult.
It is. I mean, myself, part of me doesn't want to do a thing to those, but part of me wants those beaches to be really beach worthy, and like an alternative to mackerel. But then part of me doesn't, because I don't want anyone else going there. And I recognize that that's just me, and I have to put my own personal things aside and think about what people say they want and how do we kind of find that balance to offer to people of Jamestown and our visitors and guests, and a beautiful experience that isn't over the top, but is maybe better than what's there, and it might mean having to share. Yeah, right. Okay, well, why don't we, I don't think we have to adopt these today. Why don't people sit with them and maybe at the next time we could actually adopt? We can, if there's anything else between now and then that people would like to see amended in these? That sound good? Okay. All right, so the next item is public comments. Are there any scheduled public comments? No? Okay, is anybody here? Would anyone like to come and make a public comment? Great, Paul? Just let us know who you are and where you live.
Is this on? Hello, Paul Sprague, 11 Mass Street. Appreciate all the work. You guys are working hard at this, and my concern is getting off track. And we have had a bond passed, as we know, and also the survey has overwhelmingly shown support to keep the campground. I would hope that at some point you come to a conclusion that yes, we're going to keep the campground. I would hate to see it reduced in any size because it is a wonderful generator of income. I think it can be easily used as a shared space for everyone. I would love to see some upgrade, renovation, and beautification of the RV and tent camping areas so that we have, something more to look at than just the RVs, and we get some vegetation in there and we make the place a pretty area that everybody can enjoy while preserving what I call a neighborhood and a community. These folks have been coming here for 50 years. Some of them are generational, and I would hate to see that neighborhood taken away. It's an opportunity for people that can't live here, afford to live here, to be here. And I think that is hugely important to not destroy that. So my hope is that you will come to a conclusion where we're going to say, okay, we're going to keep the RVs, we're going to keep the amount that we have now, but we're going to make it prettier, better, and we're going to upgrade the electric, which is what my bond was for, water and bathrooms, and make it something that looks beautiful. I think there's enough space up there to do all the things that we're talking about. The whole upper hill behind the pavilion is available and open. There's a lot of open space, and we have several other parks in Jamestown for people to walk and enjoy, including the Gadina Farm, where you can walk. If you don't want to be near the water, you can go enjoy nature there. So to narrow it down and to come to a conclusion and just at least say, we're going to keep the campground as is, keep the number that we have, but we're going to make it better, and we're going to continue to work on sharing the space with the general public. I hope that we can move forward with that and at least, put that part of it to bed, because there's so many people that live up there in the summer that are so nervous about what's going to happen to their future there. It would be nice to give them a sense that we care, we want the community, we want these people involved. They spend a lot of money in town. And I've owned businesses where they've, spent plenty of money buying ice cream and things like that. And they're a revenue generator for our town. And they're a community that I think is important to it. Like people have said, the fabric of the community. And I think it's very important. So I'd love to see you start working on narrowing it down to keeping the sites that we have and just coming to a landscape design and figuring out how to get the electric done soon. I don't know, it's not going to happen this year, but it's vitally important to get that fixed because there's some dangers up there with that electric. So I'm sorry I haven't been at all the meetings, but I have been watching, and I will continue to do so. I appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Chris Cannon? Hi.
Chris Cannon, 845 East Shore Road, Jamestown. I sent a thing into the council members. Everybody probably saw that, so that were my thoughts. But just since I've been surprised that we haven't seen maybe an artist rendering of what the park could look like down the road, the dream, Field of Dreams, if you will, for the residents. And there's been so much focused in on the RVs and all that, and I hear Paul here and he's got his ideas, but I don't think we should have a rush to judgment on that right away, because this is again, a once in a lifetime opportunity. I was really hit with the Jamestown Press article for September 11th, 2011, on the history of just how things have kind of rumbled along, to your point, Marissa, about a racetrack that was even there, which is outrageous, as much as I would think it's cool. But anyhow, is this part of what you guys are going to do, to come up with a landscape architecture design of what the park could look like, and possibly walking paths for the townspeople that don't have waterfront property, which is 90% of the houses in Jamestown anyhow, where they could walk there, just circle around the park and have peace and quiet and serenity, all the stuff that we desperately need today?
So this is really public comment. It's not usually Q&A, but yes, we are. We're working with, this is our landscape architect right here. We've had one workshop, and so we are now in the phase of kind of exploring different ideas.
When do you think would this be say a 3D or something like that, or a table full of what the park could be? What's the plan?
Well, we're working through it in 1D or 2D. I'm not good with my Ds. You tell me, how many Ds are there?
Well, it's just too that this is a park. You got 6,000 residents of Jamestown, 2,500 houses, and everybody's paying property taxes. And the town is really, really, really well run. And it's just, is the park supposed to make money, would be the first question I'd have. I don't know the answer to that. And not that anybody wants their property taxes going up, but even to offset it a little bit, it might be $50 a house or $70 a house, with the bigger houses paying bigger amounts than that. And I think too, you could raise some money in this town to help build this into a park also, public, private. I mean, I donated some money to when we built the park for the kids. There was a donation made there, which is fine. And I think a lot of folks would do a lot of things if it's sprung. But I think, no problem with RVs. I put it in there. Maybe it's time to wind that down over the next couple of years too. Nothing personal. We need to think of the residents of Jamestown who have supported Jamestown by paying taxes forever. So.
Thank you. Thanks. Anybody else? Cheryl.
Thank you. Cheryl Boyd, 7 Stanchion Street. I just wanted to echo everything Paul said, 100%. I am right behind him with everything, as well as the many folks that I hear from all the time. There can be some improvements made. And speaking about having events there, they would just be weekends because the pavilion's empty most of the week. Now you have parking. Everybody complains about parking now. Where are you going to park all these people? We have children there now, and we still don't have good access to the water. So I think, let's come up with the plan, get the electricity in there. I'm sure landscape architect group Beta, maybe you have another design you can flip back on now that the RVs seem to be the way to go. Keep the campground and not move too many things around. And that's my 2 cents for today. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Anybody else? It's okay.
Just one last thing I thought of, and to Mr. Cannon's point, each RV site generates about the same revenue that $1 million home generates in tax income. So having these RV sites is a value. It's a huge value without all the impact of everyone that owns a home and uses the school and the roads and everything, that all of our infrastructure. These folks were only here for about 4 months. So for each site, it has the same value as, I think, somewhere between 850 and $1 million home with no impact. So that's the financial benefit. And if we reinvest that money into the park, like you were saying, some of these other campgrounds do, there'll be no need for bonds because we put that money back into this system and it's profitable. So there's no reason why we can't put money back in to enhance the entire park off of the revenue that we generate, that will come not from the taxpayer, but from the business itself. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So thank you all. Appreciate it. And so the next item is communications received. Cody, remind me, can we get a motion to approve these all together?
Yeah, we can do lump
Okay.
sum.
So we received correspondence from Peter Wilson, Jill Harrison, Kathleen Brown, Kate Petrie, Lindsay Meehan, Liz and Blair Boyer, and Lydia Biddle. So is there a motion to accept these communications? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I,
So the next item, I guess we don't have any meetings on the schedule. And I know next week is not a good week for people. I think we were looking to the next week. Do we have something
We
scheduled?
had discussed, I think it was the 22nd, or it was in the 20s. It was the Thursday. I think worked the best for everybody.
Okay,
The 26th was
the
currently
26th.
our next scheduled meeting. We do potentially have a limited quorum of 3. So if we want to move that to a different week where we might have more availability.
I feel at this point, we should be here if we possibly can. So I don't know if people are traveling and it's just really impossible. And if that's the case, then you make that clear. We certainly understand. We just don't want people left out. We want your input.
So for me, it's just that day. I can't make that week.
Okay.
so.
So maybe we can look for, are there other days that week that,
if we're a lot earlier, I've got a meeting in California the day after, so the 27th.
but you're there the 25th, 24th, you're around?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Well, maybe we can look again. We'll do another poll and try and get something that week.
Yeah,
And
well, I'll put out for either the Monday, Tuesday, or the Wednesday.
okay.
Thank you.
Bill, will that work for you possibly?
23rd through the 25th?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. Good. So we'll do that.
And are there any particular items you'd like to see on that agenda?
I think we'll actually act on the principles
Okay.
and goals, and we talked about policies. Maybe we should actually talk about policies, like camping policies. Okay. Any others?
For next week?
Oh, in finances,
Yeah.
Bill Sammons has done kind of a deep dive on the finances, so he'll report on that.
As part of the principles, can we work on the identity piece too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. We didn't talk about that with the principals here. But yeah, maybe I've sort of avoided mission and vision because it can be a thorny thing. But if you want to take a stab or if you want to, I don't know how we want to do that.
We can just talk about it. I think.
Yeah. Maybe even develop a description of how we think based on what we've learned, we would want to ideally see Fort Getty described on Wikipedia
Yeah.
and other official things. like
Right.
that. Okay, great. Okay, so the next item is the work session.
If I can just have 5 minutes just to be able to move the mics around.
Great.
When you go to the Wikipedia, it doesn't. It needs to, yeah, it needs to be upgraded. I don't know when the last time it was. Because even when you went through it, they didn't say anything about CLSL. So it probably hasn't been looked at in quite a while.
Like one thing, I'm like, I want nothing done to that beach. I don't want anyone going.
I put a sign, it's new and improved. Please visit. You know, it's gonna be tough.
Check, check. Check, check. Check.
Check, check, check.
Seem to work.
You hear this? Yeah.
Check, check.
Check.
Check, 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 check.
Check, check.
Testing. Testing. No, this one's
not working.
Check, 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 check.
Check,
Say they
check,
can't
check.
hear
1,
me.
2, 1, 2. I think, okay, you hearing it? I think it just is very quiet, so I'll just. Yep. All right. I believe we should be good to go. If I could just have each microphone just test so I can test for it, how much sound is getting picked up.
This works, yeah. This works.
I'm just gonna.
So are we ready? Sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
We're ready. We're just testing microphones just to make sure the volume levels are all set.
Oh, this one, does this one work now? Does this one work? Yes, yes, yes. Okay.
Yep. Want to boost some of them. All right.
Okay, so Eric, do you want to take us, I had to leave before, but you want to take us kind of where we are, the baseline we're starting at and how you want to make the funds?
Sure. Tell me about your timing.
I'm good till 5:04. Other people, 3:30, 3:45? Yeah, okay, so 5:04. I have a hair appointment at 4, so. Nothing gets in the way of that.
No, we don't.
So, I wanted to address first one of the questions that had come up during public speaking, and, I think what we're doing is we're developing the program right now, and so I think we anticipate that the master plan, if you will, the landscape plan that people have asked about is coming as part of this process. So we're going to talk about some ideas. We even have some sketches today based on some of the things we talked about last time. So the process we're going through is sort of the programming is what I would I would say is happening. Just so everyone kind of understands where we're headed, and then the outcome from that programming will be a design or a couple of alternates in terms of the design that responds to the programming. And there may be options that you identify within the programming. For instance, one of the comments was, we need the campers, we need the revenue from the campers. Does that mean we need 75 RV sites, or does it mean we need some number of RV sites that generates the same revenue? So to some of the points of looking at other pricing models and so on, 75 sites occupy a certain footprint. Is that what's important to the group when we talk about programming, or is it the revenue opportunity that's represented from the campers, right? So it's a dollar discussion versus kind of a footprint discussion. So sort of, is the programming side of it that we need these number of spaces, or do we need, would we like to see this income stream retained or expanded, in the future? And so that comes out of sort of some of the comments that we had the last time we sat down. I think Richard said, hey, what if we were to move these RVs to another location? And then I think the comment was made, well, what if we reduce the number? So I want to look at that in a little bit more detail, and then we can talk on the table as well. Are you on those PowerPoint, or Cody, can you go through the PowerPoint? Just flip through maybe a couple slides here. We're going to jump around. Scroll down. That's fine. You've all seen this before. I wanted to get into some of the images that we included in your package that were concepts that Richard, I think, Bill, John, put in this. So. Yeah, so this is one that went on your packet. So this was the sketch that we produced based on the discussions of the committee, and it was sort of saying, gee, there's this great tip of land to the north and the west. There's a lot of opportunity there. Some of the nicest views in that direction are obtained from that kind of knoll at the top. What if those campers were moved to a more central location? And what if the tents were moved and we expanded the tent camping? I'll call it lot 22. It's a separate lot, sort of identified at least in the plat map as you come in. So it's just south of the guardhouse. So this was one concept, and hopefully that reflects the concepts that were talked about at that session. Go ahead to the next slide. And then I think we talked about it a little bit more, and then as a group we said, well, what if there's sort of more green space? And what if we continue to move the tents down, but maybe we just reduce the number of RVs? And I think programmatically, that's a discussion of, do we need 75 RVs? Do we need this footprint? Are we comfortable with that amount of land being committed to that use? Or are we looking for more of a balance of maybe income revenue generation, but reduction in just maybe offering a number of sites? And this comment was, maybe look at 50 sites. So we've looked at this in a little bit more detail. We'll talk about it some more, but sort of at the beginning of this kind of discussion is, can the 10 sites move? And that's what we wanted to sort of think about ourselves. So let's see, you want to talk about, Alyssa looked at this in a little bit more detail, and I'll let her present some of her findings on this slide to compare.
Sure. So we have taken the idea of just moving sites down. We really want to look at what was existing or offered. So in lot 22, which is all actually inside of the screen, currently there are 11 sites open right now. You can see the metrics on that screen. Turns out to be 3,200 square feet per pet center, decent size. Which is more than actually what the RVs currently have, which the average is about 700. So we looked at a lot and determined that we kind of keep 100-foot buffer within the property line, which is what we get. We could fit all 26 sites within lot 22. It does become pretty tight, but moving those sites over there is for.
What would be the ideal number? I mean, what would be the ideal number of tent sites? Like, is there a planning principle for tent sites so that we want to think about?
Yeah, Eric, I have discussed that.
Sorry, Alyssa, we're just going to test that microphone. I think
Okay.
it's not.
Is it on now?
Test,
Yep, there we go. I think it's really up to you guys as a committee.
It's not up to us because we don't know.
Oh,
So, I
okay.
mean, there's got to be an answer to this that.
Right, so, but I think it's not an empirical answer, like, right, so Cassie's report said each campground, each location is different and offers unique.
Yeah.
So look at this in more detail in a minute. And I think it's a programmatic question. Again, if you looked at Bill's economic analysis of what the tenant income was, I think that was kind of outlined, right? So it's going to become, I think, a discussion of RV income, if you're interested in that, and tenant income,
I
and
guess-
balancing the two.
I mean, you can approach it either way, and I'd rather approach it thinking about the revenue after.
So
You
then
know,
let's,
that, yeah.
okay, then let's keep going. Let's go to the next slide and look at what Alyssa found when she started to drop in some tents.
Yes, this is a quick sketch of what it would look like to have all 26 of those sites over there. Again, it's pretty dense, but these are mainly the 3,200 square foot sites, which is a pretty generous number. So this also includes parking for 30 vehicles, as well as a proposed, park maintenance / restroom building. So it would house both those uses. This also allows still for the pump out site right next to the guardhouse, and keeping within that 100-foot buffer from the property line.
I think there's also like another buffer of vegetation though too that the zoning calls for between camping and the edge of the property. So I think the buffer zone is actually like 125 to 150 feet from the edge of the property.
Okay. Yep.
I know that planning had put together like a summary and we had looked at that. It's a 50-foot setback and then it's a 100-foot buffer to 10 sites. But there's a vegetative buffer requirement. I just have to lay that in. So I think, putting the financial discussion from the back burner, this is just sort of like the change to this area. If you were to intensify the use by, the big picture was let's move the same number of tents down and just offer it near the gatehouse. What's the implication of that and what might that look like? And this is just one scenario, but I wanted to kind of visually characterize but thank you for doing that, by the way. Alyssa said, put on paper like what this layout might look like with common pathways and so on, common parking lot. There's other ways to do it. You could break up the parking, you could have a loop road, but it's effectively there's a 100-foot buffer all the way around in the sites.
How much space in lot 22 does this occupy out of the whole lot?
Yeah, so we had looked at this, and lot 22 is actually about like 5.6 acres. I believe somewhere it said that it was 8 acres, but according to our calculations, it was 5.6. I didn't calculate the exact square footage that we're covering with the sites. Some math, we could get that to you.
I guess my question to the committee, and Ray, your thoughts would be welcome too, on like, what is the value of tent camping? What do we want from tent camping? Why do we think it's important and how much space should it get? And because I look at this and it's, in my mind, it was different, which is not at all surprising. It takes up a lot of space, putting all of the tent camping there, and then you're giving up other things, I think. I don't know where we would put other things I think we've talked about in this space. So is there something other than revenue? Because it's not the main revenue generator compared with RVs. So is there some value to having tent camping that we want to ensure we maintain? And if so, is it 26 campsites?
Right. And so to your point too, with tent camping, there's a lot of turnover. So it uses a lot of staff resources. And so it is a little bit more intensive, I think, than the RV camping.
Yeah, I think there's some value to amassing uses in the park, and same with RVs. But I'm not sure. For me, tent camping is the concept is that they can fit in among trees, and they're going to be different size campsites. And so, do we really? And I don't know that we're married to a certain number of tent sites, but this is helpful. But what would be very helpful is to know that the square footage that is usable there with the setbacks. And is it 100 feet or is it 150 feet? Because that's going to change things dramatically.
Yeah, if there's a vegetative setback, we'd have to look at that. I was looking through this one package and that was based on how close to the 10 sites. So we'll double check that. I think we were surprised the plat maps currently in town hall is an 8 acre parcel. Mathematically, it's a 6 acre parcel. So we don't have as much space as we might have thought. And we didn't really chase that through all the way. We just kind of took the survey we had, dimensionally verified it and said, okay, well, with this kind of setback, what kind of footprints available, which was like about 2.5 acres in the sun. And there's a lot of other activity there too. It's
Yeah.
pump station, it's the guardhouse, it's trash and recycling kind of organization there and so on. And we sketched in what might be a little building there. There could be a small maintenance barn that has a restroom attached to the side of it. So that would serve those campers. They wouldn't have to walk necessarily. It would also serve guardhouse and staff at that location. So I mean, I think we can dig into this a little bit more. Just kind of I wanted to graphically illustrate the idea. Move the tents and keep everything as is. What changes, relative to the entrance to the park and this parcel.
Right.
Check. Oh, okay. So, my viewpoint on tent camping and the value that it brings, it's an affordable way to visit Jamestown. It is the lowest priced way to visit Jamestown that exists. So I think that's important. While it is, to Cassie's point, it is more work on our staff. We have to, manage the people that are there, and they can get rowdy at times. And you have mixed use. You have some people that are there to I would not say party, but party a little bit, and then there's other people who are there with their families, and so like that. There is management of that area. I do like the idea of having it all in one area because that makes it easier to manage, and it also kind of puts them in an area where that's what's happening there is tent camping. It's not a lot of mixed use space in that area. But yeah, that's where I see the value, and it's not to make the town money, it's to provide accessible ways to stay in Jamestown in the summer.
John.
When I was thinking about the relocation, potentially, how you might open up more space here by better utilizing that space, I wasn't really hung up on that'd be a great place for tent camping as much as it was an elegant way of, kind of putting a similar operation in a similar place. I do think that, so 26 isn't a magic number, but for me, 0 would be wrong, right? For exactly the reasons that Ray just talked about. Because, if we want accessibility to the island, then I think you need to have some way, an entry level way of getting into the park.
And however many sites you have to multiply that by 2 for the amount of parking. Because we allow 2 cars per site. And if you go into the 4th of July weekend, it is a challenge to manage, and we overstaff during those weekends to manage that. But it's even with 2 vehicles, it can be tough. People don't read the waivers and things agreements that they sign. Come with 3 vehicles, they don't know what to do. We have to manage that. So you're going to need for those sites to be set and multiplied by 2 because we allow the two parking spots for each site.
Is there anything other than us that determines that as a policy?
I know, exactly.
We do, but there's a reason that it is set up that way. The size of the sites, and when people go camping, to have 2 tents on that one site is what we allow, and a lot of times that's how people plan their tent camping trip. But to your point, we could change policy, we can change the size. Really, we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
But if we're gonna maintain kind of the similar structure as we have now, you want to make sure that there's at least double the parking from the amount of spots there are.
So something we haven't talked about, but Bill brought up in his notes that he shared with us is whether or not we will provide electricity to the tent camping sites. I don't know. That was a concern. We heard that there was some tensions between the RV campers and the tent campers over the pedestals, electric pedestals. So, when I look at benchmarking, the benchmarking work, all the campgrounds are kind of contained. It's all one space. And so, especially considering electrical too, would we split up the electrical project? Would we split, does it make sense to have, the RV and the tent campers in different spaces across the whole park? If we're thinking about making more open space and making this more accessible and getting away from Fort Getty being seen as a campground, I don't know that it makes sense to have everything spread out like that. So I'm thinking about this.
Yeah. I loved when you brought this up, and I have been thinking about it too, and I think this is one great concept, but I also wonder about if we consolidated tents where they are up closer to the water and, maybe reduce the number of RVs, and not necessarily increase to 26, but increase some amount. And then there's the existing bathroom facilities there that would be upgraded to serve tent camping. So that is also, I wonder about that.
Right. But also when you move the RV campers closer to the pavilion, like does the pavilion events and the sound affect them up there? I don't know
They're over
about.
by 10.
Yeah.
Pavilion's done by 10.
Okay.
Plus there's foliage up there to block it.
What did you say?
I said there's also the greenery that will help stop the sound. That's why I thought the campers, the RVs up top, you have all the trees, you have the bushes, that would help dampen the sound. And the only reason I mentioned moving all the campers there wasn't to have 26, what would ever fit, but it made Ray's job easier because everything is consolidated. It can be managed from one point of view. And then, as you mentioned, the electric problem with the campers, putting electricity in there depends on how many spaces you want to have. I know you're going to need some. I'm not sure how big a deal it is. I don't think it's as big a deal as the RV sites because you don't need 30 amp for that. But it was just an idea to consolidate things. And the land there is not used. You could maybe walk in it, but there's no paths. The high value property is the property on the hill. So to leave that up there, baking in the sun in a tent is not always ideal if you ever camped in a tent.
That's a good point.
You're just baking in the sun. So that it makes it separates the sites down because you have a few trees, you have a few bushes. So there is some isolation. You're not looking at your neighbor's tent when they put the light on so you can see everything in their tent. There is some separation and privacy. Moving the campers, RVs, even though I'd like to keep the same number, you're opening up more green space for the town up at the hill and with the views. Now, I don't think we need to have 28 by 60 on all of them because the other sites are 10 or 15 wide, but that'd be too crowded. That would be similar to Secana. I could see reducing or policy changes to make the aesthetics better. I'm not sure everybody needs a deck, but again, that may be dictated by the fact that the ground's so uneven. If you want to put a chair out and you're slitting down the hill, there's a lot of things to look at, but I'm not saying that that's 26 is the number. It could be whatever you want. It could be 16, could be 10, could be whatever's there now. And as far as the RVs, I think there's a lot of room. Even if we kept it the same, if you consolidated the space a little bit, they may be a little unhappy, but to reduce the number, because if you look at a lot of the survey, they want the revenue the same. And reducing it is I guess you're contradictory. You're 60%, you're at the other 40% would be happy. But you could make it better. And I think if you neaten it up with, I'm not even saying greenery because most people don't want trees. I just think we need to organize the way they're laid out so all of them are even. There's not, each one has a different style deck, each one. You can pretty it up, as I guess you could say. But that was the only reason why I suggested that. It wasn't to keep all 26 down there.
Yeah, and I know we have limited time, but this feels to me like the beginning of the planning process, and I'd like to blue sky a little bit. And Alex, you had or Eric, you had mentioned that you look at how RVs might be planned in a particular area. You were talking about a kind of a chevron design. So one thought that I had on my own was just would it make sense possibly to move, to have some RVs down there? And what could that handle? And I was looking at 186 feet by 102 feet to get 12 Chevron 30 by 60 lots in for RVs. Does that work? It would be really helpful to have from you guys some of the sense, as Marissa was suggesting, of, what's a typical campsite, tent site? How would we possibly plan out a better use of space for RVs for those when we get up to this area? We have some slope. How do we manage that slope? Do you have suggestions on that? Those types of things would be really helpful.
And that we talked a little bit about it more today. What I'm trying to land a little bit is the programmatic side. So how do we see this? And that could be an option to look at our here. We have, I think, just taking a step back and going back to the concept of what if you put all the tents at the entrance, right? So we wanted to kind of illustrate that for you and kind of say, we think there's the capacity to put them all. I think if you want to reduce that number, Ray pointed out we need more parking. What we're trying to say is this an appropriate land use? And here, do we continue this use? Or sort of expand it a little bit to expand the tent offerings? I think that tenting, typically we're going to be able to retain more existing vegetation. So the trees are going to be able to work around. There's some nice black cherries in there. So other things that would provide shade. It's going to be able to be more organic. You can see Alyssa built some groupings, like there's 6 tents in that middle rectangle. There's groups of 3 and 2, so you can get families coming together. Again, speaking to some of the comments I've made earlier, so there's maybe some ways to structure the pathways to create spaces that naturally accommodate families or groups that want to get together. So I think working with the existing vegetation, tenting kind of fits in, it is a little more integrated, and you can retain more of the aesthetic and the just sort of the look as you come into the campground. You can look at RVs, it's going to just mean more clearing or have a lesser yield, to fit RVs down in this area.
But I think if we explored RVs there, we can very thoughtfully design and create that space for them among the vegetation. Now, when we talk about new vegetation, it takes time for it to grow, and for the, it doesn't happen right away. So I don't know, there's 2 sides to it. There's another piece from the survey data that we have not talked about, but from the user survey, the users of the park said that they did not have preference for community activities in the park. And so what I understood is that they are kind of their own community, and the more activity that happens in the park and the busier it gets, like they don't want that. They want like their quiet, their view, they want the camping experience. And so I don't know how you balance that with the space on the hill though either.
I guess for right now, my preference would be to make some progress. This is a great concept. Thinking about consolidating tents here, probably my opinion would be fewer in number, but maintaining a tent experience for kids and, to your point, Ray, it's just a great opportunity. But then now I'd love to also, we're thinking about programming, what we learned from the survey. We can nail down where we want to continue to have RV camping. What does that look like? What's the best use? And then how do we do these other things? If we think about this as a community park that has camping, how do we think about the community park too? And I don't know if you can get us there.
I think, is that consensus around
People feel okay about that? Obviously, we can come back and think about RVs in this area or whatever.
I think we've learned something important from this, but we should move on to the next.
So we're conceptually forward, actually sort of back in the selection of how the subject. This right here. So this was a sketch. I can't remember when it came out after the workshop, but it's sort of looking at Richard's ideas of maybe pulling back some of the RVs from the edges. It's a quick sketch, but it's kind of saying what's most important, right? So I think people are interested in the edges. You can think about the Kid Ride Nature Trail, the views, the immersion in nature, the opportunities to extend that, see that nice wide band green where the nature trail is?
Yeah.
Not that it would be simple forestation, but the idea of wrapping the site more, sort of expansively with more space for the public to be able to walking trails. Some of the comments that have come out about nature preserve, bringing better habitat, addressing invasive plants, and that zigzagging line sort of represents the concept of, again, Richard's saying, well, if you pull back the campers, what might be possible? So this is just illustrating like at a conceptual level, what starts to happen if you move everybody into the center. And there's an opposite of this, which is, you know, we want to emphasize the center and maybe these RVs stay at the edges, but I feel like it's the edges that are what are people are most interested in and going to be engaged with the waterfront and the views and so on, and then look at how do we consolidate. And maybe the layout works fine the way it is, or maybe you can shrink down a little bit more with that. If you go back, yeah, go forward. Sure, you go to the next one. And then the next one too. So we had just done a little bit of looking and updated sort of what footprints are based on the sites that are available. So at one time there were 83 total RV sites, that's the right hand column. You can see some of these have sort of open spaces in them, and those are the spaces that help that way or indicated as open. And that total in 75 spaces for the current one just being on. So you can see the square footage came down and gave you these numbers earlier, sort of updated them based on detailed look at the footprints and what's happening there.
Can I ask Ray a question? Is it, you fill 75 spaces like there's some, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, sorry.
No. And the next one, these are just looking at concepts. So then taking ideas from the last time we sat down in the workshop, we moved 75 spaces and sort of reorganized it using largely the existing road network. Created more green space, and we're not programming yet, we're not showing landscaping or pathways or the connectivity. Those are all opportunities that are going to come out of it, was sort of coalesce around what the space could be. But sort of what does it look like to reorganize the RVs? So this concept kind of extended them out, it's got the 75. You can see we sort of recreated it. Historically, there was sort of a loop road that went around. This takes out some of the interior roads, so some of these roads here. You can see these interior roads, to some degree, maybe don't make a lot of sense. But I think if you think about the future, we can maybe put more sites together and develop a cleaner circulation pattern. These are just remnants of verification. And you can see in the sketch that's on the board, it looks at, you know, is there an opportunity to actually eliminate some pavement, turn some green space on that outer edge? So I guess discussion or comments on this. This again goes to the concept of moving the tents and keeping the 75 and what that might start to look like. As more of a planning exercise, not the landscape plan per se, but just graphically, what does that mean in terms of footprint and layout?
So those roads would be for cars. We did hear that people use the park for, you know, pedestrian access and running and walking. So I also see those loops as being helpful. And
yes, absolutely. I mean, I think there's no restrictions on them now, so you would send the parts. We have a whole challenge to work on at the boat ramp. We're not good at digging into that yet. We're just looking at kind of a big picture discussion. You know, look at the next one, which was just actually what is 50 start to look like. And there's, you know, a range in between, obviously you can imagine. The way we sort of conceptualize this, and you can look at it, sport things, those that sort of brought these sent these roads back to the south. But the tents moved, we're able to start to put in campsites in those. You get a better sense of the amount of green space that you get around it, and I think that also starts to open the door of talking about the top of that, too sorry about that space. And you know, I think there's different ways to do it. We talked a little bit earlier. Can you interpret those casemates? Can you open them up and people can walk back into pieces of them? And you know, that might be really interesting. Another concept might be, is there a way to preserve it intact in place and go over the top and create a level platform there, which offers incredible views into the south. So is that for tent space or RV space, or does that space become maybe more beneficial to public space that anyone can experience? Right now, it's a lot of vegetation to manage, but there's room for improvement in that.
John?
How big are these spaces? Are they the size as the existing spaces?
Did 50 come up last time? 50 seems like it's a third reduction. That seems a lot to me. I
Right.
personally am more comfortable around 6.
I think I ended the meeting saying, why don't we think about the range of 50 to 75? Not because there was any magic other than there was, if you thought about some of the pricing opportunity, you want to stay revenue neutral. I don't think you go much lower than 50. Yeah, and it would be the bottom edge of what was sort of our solution space.
Yeah, I think I had thrown the number 50 out because if we went to Middletown's pricing of 8,000, 50 times 8 is $400,000. We're reducing the amount of electricity. So they were pretty much revenue neutral at 50. But I was also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm curious, Ray, when you hear that number and you know the community, how does that feel?
So, like, for example, this year we had 9 open spots for new seasonals. So if you staged it, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily, if you keep everything the same with people coming back each year, it'd take you a few years to get there, and it wouldn't disrupt kind of the people that are already there. Kind of, you can't say, hey, you're on the bottom of the list that, you're being kind of moved out. So, I mean, other than that, yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, that my thought is, how long would it take us to get there if everything stayed the same? Yeah, like 9 is a lot this year. Generally, we're more like, well, say 3 to 5 vacate each year. So, it takes a few years to get there, or I don't know, raise the price up, and less people are trying to return, things like that. So
Remind us again how many temporary spots versus.
So there's no guarantee of temporary spots. What we do is try to fill every spot with a seasonal.
Okay.
And if we allow for the RV site holders to have a 1-year leave for good cause, if they have a medical concern, there's something going on in their lives, but they get 1-year waiver, that's it. So once you use your waiver, once it can't come back, then that site goes for reassignment. So this year, I think we have 4 transient sites this year. And I think we had 9 new seasonals this year, if I remember correctly.
John?
I have another question about this drawing, which is just, is there something that inhibited you from putting the campers farther south from the beginning? So in other words, starting the count as far over as they go and then filling.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like we took off this road and that spot right there. And I guess there's nothing that necessarily stopped us from filling that because they're filled in the right. I think just programmatically, we had, and you're right, it's okay, so anything's between, it's sort of like 50, but yes. And there's definitely topography challenges and vegetation, but incredibly interesting. Spatially planning, programming, what does it mean? What does it look like? And I think we're all envisioning that these spaces are augmented with landscaping, buffers, and some of the things that you saw at Fisherman. So, so while we're just showing sort of a raw layout, it's going to be softened and graded. Depend. And sort of like organizationally, how do you feel about these layouts and these concepts? So
Yeah, so or you're not showing the use of that middle, I've forgotten what, is that B block? I remember that our town administrator had put forth a plan in February where he was showing all of those filled in. And that's where it would be helpful for you to.
Below where the parking is now.
Yeah, the B lot, yeah. So, I mean, it's not being fully used right now because the lower part of it is got a big slope, but it looked like Ed or someone had thought through possibly grading that. Is that possible?
For what, Bill?
To put-
For RVs?
For RVs, for two rows of RVs in B.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea, I think, that get accomplished through sort of terracing that slope. And I think when you give essentially opportunity, if the slope is coming out like that, whether it's through boulders or some other landscape treatment, so level bench, come in, maybe level another bench here with opportunity then to plant, vegetation in the center between the two, so this would be the upper side of the Fort Getty Road down here, so RVs would have to sort of sit in this kind of terrace condition. When you could accomplish that, you could also accomplish some of the buffering that people ask about visually, like the terracing effects, so you could introduce planting to kind of attenuate some of the use to the site by having pockets of vegetation along the hedgerow and able to type, but sort of groupings of vegetation. But I think you could get there through urban one. I think that's terracing stuff.
On your idea, Bill, I did go up there after last meeting. That area is all the parking, but the upper 25 feet, there's the fence, 25 feet to the road. That is close to about level as you're gonna get. You could move the fence, which would move the RV parking away. But if you were to try to terrace everything, now when you have an overflow at the pavilion, they have nowhere to park. They'll be parking all the way down near the ramp, which wouldn't work for the pavilion. But you could, if you wanted to, take where the RV guests park, which is west of that fence, move the fence another 15 feet to the east. You could probably move some RVs there, but then we just need to find the parking for the RV guests. But it would work to do half of that row.
I think conceptually too, you could also say that maybe the smaller level is dedicated for a pavilion park. So if there's some kind of terrace committee, what's more typical along the road is instead of just parking on the slope, the pavilion parking is kind of patched in with the ability to then have the RVs and parking on the upper tier. So there's one tier that's more dedicated to RVs, supporting that use, lower tier that's more public, if you will, public parking.
So are you proposing to add in addition to what's there or to reallocate what's there to this new?
Possibly reallocate. I'm hearing a lot of the people that are looking for more parkland are the top of the hill is kind of the premium spot. Yes, to a large extent, but I mean, if literally you could move most of that upper.
No, of course.
No.
I'm just not. I mean, people are coming for you. We've already taken some of that away.
Right.
I think, like, how much? And then
Well, then it becomes this.
it's so much more to it's a lot of traffic on that road. And, I like the buffer. I'm sure that the campers like the buffer that's there as well. And not B from A, I think people like the buffer on both sides.
Right.
It's a lot of activity on that, but now more CISF and all this, it's doesn't sit there.
I mean, we could, if we're talking about redoing roads, we could always loop it down through that lower block back to the main road and not have it come through. But yeah, I think it makes sense.
Space. The whole
Right.
C, E, F,
Yeah.
you know.
And that might be fine. It just, yeah, that it puts all the RVs right in the center of the park.
So
But as long as people can get around it.
vegetation, in a case like this, would you actually put vegetation between campers or just kind of around the campground, the part of the camp, of the park?
So I think the vegetation would be more integrated, right? So that it would be worked in between and maybe have a cluster of 3 that have less kind of definition and then like framed into like little blocks. So that's what I would say. And that would be the next thing to go into. So if you say sort of 50 seems lighter than we now that we see it, it's not getting us to where we were thinking. Let's look at 60 or something. So we're gonna bring this out. And then I think at that point, we start to look at in more detail like what they might actually physically look like on the ground with landscape treatments. I think that, again, conceptually like land use and kind of layout.
Yeah.
How do we feel about these?
Yeah, and I don't know, John, I need something, but I'm curious, I would also like.
Sorry, Marissa, I think your mic just might not be.
I would also like, as we think about policies, what would it look like to have a little more uniformity? If you thought about what was offered in each of those sites, I know now is there a picnic table for everyone? No? Is there a fire pit for everyone? A fire pit? Or if we said in a uniform way, yes, you can have a deck, but this is the deck size. You know, this is so that it just has a little bit more aesthetic appeal.
That makes sense to me in terms of standardizing.
Yeah.
But if you imagine this pattern, if we define each one as sort of a little perimeter that's consistent in the off season, and there's not an RV there, it's going to feel very odd. And so we're trying to think about rooms that might be groupings of, let's say, 3 or 5,
Okay.
you know, kind of structurally with some tree planting. But then consistency like through the site amenities and the other features that you're talking about that would be there in the off season, you know, they typically would.
John, sorry.
One of the things we talked about the last time, maybe it's in a future drawing, is simply changing the orientation of each camper, right? Like particularly in this drawing, the highest band of property is actually, what's that? It's a parallelogram. And why wouldn't you turn all of, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is it coming? No. But you turn them all at an angle. You actually fit a few more in. And you also, you may change the ability for some of the interior campers to have views out of more than one spot. But you haven't yet explored. It's okay that we haven't got to it yet, but it's still on the to-do as opposed to already on the drawing board, right?
So, yeah, you look at that, then you just feel prepared to talk about it. But I think you can imagine sort of this commitment to sort of land use, kind of general footprint, that we would look at the details of describing how the units might fit in, if there's different views that you can afford at different angles. It might also make access easy. Getting in at 90 degrees is challenging. So if it's seasonal, there's less sort of pulling in and pulling out. But if it's got some turnover, the angle definitely helps as far as getting the trailers and RVs.
I'm wondering if there, before we get like into specifics per site, now that everyone has seen like, you know, how much area that 75 versus 50 takes up, if there's maybe a number that the group is comfortable working forward with to see concepts with. I know we'd mentioned 60, or I think a big thing coming out of today would be having a better grasp on that before we get into the specifics.
60 is 20%, right? I think that's I'm more comfortable with 60 if we're thinking about reduction. What does 60 look like?
What was it in?
What was it in the town administrator's plan? Do you remember? And if we just, if in that plan we substituted, if we substituted HUD or RV, I just don't remember. Do you?
Fine, but
Yeah,
yeah, I'm just pulling it.
Okay, okay. 60 sounds like a good number for me, isn't it?
Well, like we discussed with tents, I don't know that we need to get that hung up in exact numbers. I mean, is this on? You know, it seems silly to, unless you have unless you're gonna green it all up. But in that drawing, there are empty lots.
Right.
I mean,
There's capacity.
there's capacity. I mean, you know, and maybe, and I like John's idea of parallelogram, you know, exploring that. But so, you know, I mean, we could probably get more.
Yeah, I
in there.
agree.
I mean, but, you know, so is it 50, 60, 56?
It's not 50. I mean, I just think
Yeah.
it's too much. Personally, and not about the money. It's not the revenue. It just feels like a drastic shift.
Well, how much has been reduced in the last 10 years?
How much has it been reduced?
How much, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Wow. Here, if you, as you go back in time, that number increases.
Yeah, I know it was over 100 at one time, way back when.
Yeah, right.
So you've lost roughly 10% in the last 5 years.
Yeah. Maybe 75.
What do you think, Richard? What are you feeling comfortable with? Reduction at all?
If there's space and the town is getting a lot more space, then I like the number. It just needs to be cleaned up. And the reason I like the number, and it has nothing to do with the RV park, is Fort Getty in general. Because if you don't use it for RVs, the next council or the council after that is going to have another building up there, 2 buildings, and all the surveys don't want that. But we have the ability to try to control that with this council if they accept our proposal. But if we leave it all open, it leaves it open for some future development, which would not benefit 100%. It would benefit a certain minority or it would just be used for another purpose. It may sound nice, but it takes away from 100% of the population. 75 campsites times the money helps 100% of Jamestowners, not 10, not 50, not ones with kids. It benefits 100% of Jamestowners. That's why I like the number the way it is.
So I agree that we don't want to build on there now, but that's the only space that's not in the flood zone. And in the future, I don't know what they're going to want to do, but, you know, I don't, you know, it just, I don't know. And the RV sites are mobile though, so they can be moved and things can change, but we just need to keep in mind that the flood zone is a serious thing to think about. And, you know, going forward with climate change, like the town will have to make decisions about that space in the future, so.
But there's nothing competing in this, I mean,
Right
maybe
now.
unless there's something in your mind that.
No, I don't know. I'm just saying like, you know, in 10, 20 years, you know, maybe they'll want to do something there, but.
So what I like is the idea that we seem to, unless not everybody's saying what they're thinking, but it seems that people are comfortable with this configuration. And if we can maximize the number of RVs, there's no magic number to 50 or 60. If 75 could fit in there, great. But if it's 65, like, let's look at how do we maximize this space use for, you know, as many RVs as we could accommodate.
Get into more detail about that. This conceptual model. That's progress, yes.
Right.
So one thing that we haven't talked about, but which I wouldn't want, I think I'm in complete agreement with the statement you just made, but the one place where I would start to have a problem is if we take over everything up here and don't leave. You know, one of the things that I found interesting is there aren't that many picnic tables for park visitors, walk-ins. drive-ins. And I think that this area up here, you know, particularly if we figure out how to effectively use it, whether it means you turf over the concrete or whether you do something else that kind of, you know, you find a way of effectively using it, I think it'd be a really great place for people to go. Just the same way I do think that battery down there could be used as a really nice day. I call it a day camping spot where you can go and set up for the day and have a picnic and go and use that beach, no matter how rough or sandy it is. And I just think it'd be good if we found more places for that kind of thing. And I don't really, and maybe some of that fits around the open space that we've just cleared, but probably not up there in the north. I sort of, at least in the absence of any other idea, I feel like our objective there right now is open space. So.
To that point, John, I've been up on top of the battery recently before this last snow, and it is, what comes to mind is being over at Fort Wetherill, above the DEM buildings and looking at the water and being able to, there's benches up there, and it's all safe and clear. I think the top of that Tussard battery could be cleared of probably mainly invasive vegetation, and would make a very nice viewing area to go up, have a picnic, whether it's picnic table, benches, not get too permanent, just and you know, people can have you know, a cocktail party or a private grouping there. Not RVs, not tents, but just a
Yeah, I can't wait to get to what you're thinking about that. You've raised that early on about that opportunity of that area of the fort. Yeah, and so I'm dying. I don't know if we're ready to get there, but I can't wait to get there.
That's tough. Well, I think just when we talk about what's happening here, see.
Sorry, Eric, do you mind if I just have you steal Alyssa's mic, just even nearby, just there's been having some trouble. Picture.
You know, as these come closer to the battery, they sort of limit that reuse opportunity or that found ground here, which is kind of lost. So we can look at this infill to maybe this opportunity, pull the road back a little bit and have a little bit more space. And conceptually, maybe we didn't put that. These are all just resource slides at the back and a character. That's fine. You can take a look at this one. So this is a layout of the battery and the details of the battery.
I passed it. Yep, we got it.
There we go. It's okay. Thank you. So you can see there were 3 main gun emplacements, which had 12-inch cannons that were basically they were concealed below, and then they were raised up to fire and lowered back down the casemates. And then to the western side, there were additional 2 smaller guns placed there as well. And so what you're seeing is a lot of the around the gun emplacements is concrete, and that's what you're seeing on the surface. When you walk around up there, you see those big expanses of sloping concrete. That essentially is like the fortifications around the gun emplacements. So I think at the conceptual level, the options might be the way that is today. You know, it's sort of an irregular terrain up here. Maybe you see the top of that gun emplacement. You see the concrete coming down. Then kind of tails off as it opens up to the south and towards the and then hidden, and it's been filled in over time, is all of this fortification underneath. This is a concrete slab over the surface. So this fort is still there as far as we know. It's just been filled over time. You can see it in the cross sections down there to the left. And so conceptually, sort of like, what are the opportunities to either open this up? You can try to activate or maybe reduce the spill level or activate the spaces that are framed by those. And you can see those same kind of emplacements at Weatherall. You go there, you can see these circular volumes of concrete walls. Another option would be this, you know, to pull at the top. So again, using boulders, using site work, introducing some vegetation, you know, having a transition with some fill over the top and having the ability to have some trees, things like picnic tables and things like that, activity within that space, is that you would essentially encapsulate what's there today. So this would become green over the top, green buffer and transition, terracing kind of effect down with trees and native vegetation here. And this upper level, which is where you're getting all those views to the west and to the south, could be a public space that's not used only by tents or only by RVs, but is open for anyone that's using the park to come in, picnic below the shade trees. So at the conceptual level, I guess that's what I'm looking at is there an opportunity to manage that vegetation, create something like this, look at the kind of terracing effect, and can you end up with a more suitable surface for other activities than kind of the irregularity that's up there? Because I think it was just filled and kind of left, and that's so we inherited, and that's the way it's been for a long time. But is there a way to reuse the space, make the space, you know, more for people above that use out are pretty spectacular up there.
So, and this is a question, just actually thinking about the age of the fort. How safe, how safe do we know that top is? Like, I've been up there, I've walked around after, you know, we kind of had that discussion. It's just like, you just see areas where the concrete's crumbling away, like you're up top, kind of high up, and it's empty underneath. I don't know how thick that, like, how do you go about bringing people up there and then, you know, putting trees or grass or like, I mean, is that even gonna be possible?
Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, I think there's a little bit of investigation. So we know, like, through the drawings, we know how thick and how big the concrete walls are, where they are, relative to the other features on the site. In cases like this, sometimes if there's voids, it's filled with like a very lightweight concrete, a flowable fill that goes in and occupies that volume. And so if there are voids, you know, you want to take steps to prevent, you know, potential collapse or a compromise. But there are ways to do it. There are techniques. There's also reinforcing or geotextile grid systems that can help stabilize that surface and provide a more uniform settling if settling were to occur. We're not trying to, you know, place any structures. We're talking about landscaping and kind of softscape up there. So I think they are compatible. You definitely would need more looking, but I think at the concept level is, can we use this better than the irregularity of the terrain that's up there, you know, today?
I know the elevation is, I know the elevation is the, like, the high point. It's exactly what we're trying to capture in terms of accessibility and view and all. I was just envisioning something that might actually be on two levels, since there is infill. And I'm not sure of its stability. You're going to have to check that out anyway. So maybe there's a way to lower part of it and then reach up again and get to that area at the top.
Upper level.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And I think I'll go through some slides here, but we have a couple of views of the restroom building historically, that one right there, right? So this is a shot. Yeah, so this is a shot of the restroom was really a power plant with generators and so on. So you can see these are very visible today at the beginning of the fortification to the left. And so that idea of a 2-level, maybe restoring a staircase, you know, being able to actively interpret a piece of the site. I think that exists on the eastern side, sorry. And that the western side is maybe more the fill condition. You can see that superstructure's not visible anymore. So a lot of that's been filled, but maybe there would be an opportunity to open and interpret the eastern side of the fort.
The weather and maintenance, and I saw your trees and I'm going, and we're really gonna be able to have shade trees up there, you know, the winds or can affect them and that kind of thing. And it just might be nicer to have different areas, different
Move through, like different,
Yeah,
really,
move through.
we've talked about rooms, right? At different outdoor rooms. So the scale of the trees will be smaller, you know, if you're familiar, like beaver tail, you know, even though you might plant a large tree, it's just going to grow shaped by the wind. But I think you can get filtered shade up here, and I think that's probably important to making that space activated and useful.
Well, even if you're not down as far as what you see in that image, but like you can go maybe down about halfway, then it still kind of gives you a sense that.
And this could be a phased approach too, where you sort of deal with it west to east, and sort of try to reclaim and manage the invasives, and then this would require more investment if you wanted to sort of activate the engagement with the port.
Of course.
Thoughts on saying this now? I mean, I don't know if that
And then
starts to answer.
For yeah, this is an awesome picture. I like to see exactly where they are ahead now currently.
Yeah, it really helps you understand. So this is the road I was talking about. So there was this sort of service road that looped around. And again, we were dealing with an inherited pattern.
I guess, like all of this options, like what's the simplest option to just get better access to that beautiful high point that we are not only taking advantage of now in a safe way. And then if there are options to have a more, as you're talking about different rooms or different experiences, that's great. It seems like more engineering, more cost. So.
It depends. I think when you look at the details, the western side wasn't nearly as complex or developed. So if you wanted to
Yeah.
recover some land initially and say, oh, this doesn't have 30 feet of structure, it's only got 16 or something. No, so again, you could sort of work at it from one side if you wanted to look at what that would like, and then this becomes more intense, more involved east.
Yeah, and my sense is that the side that's facing south is heavily reinforced concrete. You will probably have no problem ever with safety, except for the fact that the top concrete is breaking up. So what do we do about that? Because plants have been growing there. But then where that ends and that starts, it's a lot more complex, to your point, Marissa. Yeah.
Sorry. We also talked in the beginning about having different types of recommendations, right? Did we talk
Yeah.
about like a no regrets list, or is that what we called it?
No, what did you call it?
No regrets,
No
Bill called it,
regrets.
Yeah.
John called it.
So, it's kind of having different types of recommendations.
Yeah.
And so, different projects involve different levels of investment. And so maybe we can think about this that way.
Yeah, particularly up here, if go to the next slide, it shows the top. But, I mean, as you think about it, even with sort of limited investment, just evening out some of the terrain, making decisions about the invasive plants, managing invasive plants, it's not a huge investment, but would dramatically enhance the quality of that space. So we all acknowledge the views are tremendous and sort of been lost over time. So just managing the embankment without any of the improvements that I sketched, is a step one, and that stuff could happen immediately, right? And then work your way towards other phases.
Yeah, I mean, this to me is very exciting, because even if we went into this and we're thinking that we just are offering as like sort of phase one or upgrades to what exists, this is a real gift, I think, to people that use Fort Getty or, may not have considered it, but this is something that will be.
I think it'll drive engagement too, right?
Yeah, 100%. And the electrical is. Okay.
As far as what we wanted to take away from today, we really wanted to saying, how do you feel about it? All coming off of the top of the site, and how do you feel about sort of consolidating our piece of work on configurations? I think generally I'm hearing this consensus on both and heading both of those directions, moving the tents down and consolidating the RVs. 50s not enough. 75 is where we're at, but what works with maximizing sort of green space. Those are marching orders, or I'm trying to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in terms of, I know that at one point you talked about where the tents are now, you had thought of using that for RVs. We're not doing that. Is that now just also open space?
I mean, I'd kind of like to explore consolidating the campground because of the electrical, especially, and the management of
So
it.
consolidating the tent camping there?
I mean, is it possible at lot 22 to put all that? I don't know. I'm just curious if, you know, RV and tent would be at lot 22
All the RVs?
or I don't know. Like what's
I,
possible?
so to be honest with you, Cassie, when you said that, I kept my mouth shut because, and I'm not good at that. You all know that. To me, we would be inviting a lot of pushback from neighbors. I think there's already an interest that we've heard about of thinking about the campground or thinking about Fort Getty as beginning where the pillars begin. And we're already kind of pushing it out.
Oh, I see.
So, yeah, John.
Look, my sense is the same, but it's only because it's mostly because I don't think you're going to get that many. I don't think you're going to get that many RVs in there for it to be worth the squeeze. To be honest, I would flip the assumption about tent camping electricity. I mean, particularly if we're providing parking spaces for 2 cars, the battery in your car can charge your phone, right? So I would change the services to the campers rather than worry about, you know, how expensive it could be to electrify lot 22 beyond what we already do for a bathroom. Just a general impression about this. I mean, I think what I've heard from my colleagues is that, you know, we can play around with the numbers versus the space versus the revenue, but there's probably a general intention to stay revenue neutral, right? Unless you said, look at what you could get for only $10 fewer. Let me ask if we're comfortable playing with the size of a lot, because it strikes me, you know, our revenue off of camping is a function of number of campers, square footage, and price. And so far we talked about price, we've talked about number of campers. We haven't talked about the size of a lot.
Yeah, I think the main thing with reducing the number is not because we don't want that amount of RVs there. It's that we want to make the experience for the RVs, the number of RVs that we end up to be better, which would probably be a little bit of a larger lot size. And, you know, as Eric mentioned, dividing them out into maybe little rooms. And so what you're seeing up there that we had up there, it's not necessarily the configuration that we would settle on. It's more of just you know, this is what this many sites looks like. This is how much of the land it would cover. So it's definitely open for configuration and site size.
But those little rectangles are are 1,700 square feet, right? They're what we are today, right?
So what we were showing up there, those guys right there, those are the size of lots currently. So if you can see, they're all a couple different sizes. So 1,700 square feet is the average size of all those sites. So with, you know, removing some of those, we could potentially make all of them the larger site. So.
Yeah, okay. So what I'd like to ask my colleagues is whether you're open to reimagining the size of a site in order to play with the total footprint for any given number of campers.
It depends on where you're going with that. Is it bigger sites to make it, like, how you have to think?
Honestly, I don't know. But, you know, we've had a discussion about 75 versus 60 versus 50. And we also heard benchmarks of 700. I'm not saying we should go there, but I do think it'd be really interesting to say, well, you know, look, John, you can't get any more campers. Maybe you can get 1 more or 2 more if you turn those top 2 rows on an angle. But you know, we could get back to 65 if we just made everyone 2 feet shorter. I'm just.
No, I think those are just the right questions. I don't have the answers, but I do think there's a point where I wouldn't want to go below 60. I'd rather be going up. And if we could have 65, but if the 65 means you're losing something else for the campers, you know, so those are exactly the right conversations.
It could also be phase 2 where, you know, phase 1 would be to keep all 75 and then, you know, next phase would be to, you know, just phase out a couple on the outskirts. And so
That's a little harder though, because we're on the verge of a infrastructure decision around electricity.
True, yep.
Do the final layout, so that there can be the least disruption in the topography as possible, unless there's another reason to do it, like for environmental or for stormwater or something like that.
Yep.
Because I think it's good to have everyone, I mean, if they can be at different levels, where perhaps you can work with the topography a
Mhm.
little bit better, and that would also give people a better experience. But I don't see doing a huge infill project or
Right.
anything like that.
Yep.
Marissa, maybe you can lay out for me. I'm having a hard time understanding what's magical about 65 or 75. The sense that I really got from the survey is people want more open space. And I'm willing to, configure things and I like the idea of, them being in a place that we could maybe tree up around it. But I'm seeing that revenue neutral could be as low as 50. So, and I'm not standing there at 50 or 55 or 60, but
I mean, to me, it's not just about the revenue, and there has been reductions. And if you looked at the
Right.
survey results, if we're gonna really be informed by that, 60% or something said maintain RVs. So there's some people that want to reduce, there's some people that want to expand, and there's some people that want to eliminate. So if we're landing, I'm open to some reduction. I think a third is too much. I'm not comfortable with a third.
because it's hitting the RV community.
It's hitting our community. Like, is it a community of 50? I don't know. At some point, it doesn't feel like it's so much of the open, if the other values are being open and welcoming, and, if people brought up that these people have been coming for generations and that's part of who we are, I think is hitting who we are. It makes me uncomfortable. It doesn't have to make anybody else uncomfortable,
Right.
but I'm just, sharing my own sensibility of
Right.
this.
We
There
don't-
have been reductions over time.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask Ray a question. 10 years ago, how many residents camped there? Last year, how many residents camped there? If you have an idea, are we going up or are we going down?
So I only have like actual numbers since I've been there. So what I would say is there's been an increase of residents there since I've been. That we're just talking from 2021 to current. I don't know the breakdown beforehand, like how many residents there were back then, but it seems to be, and not by a lot, but I mean, a few of them, there were more last year than there had been since I had been.
Okay, the reason I brought it up is where everybody's making so much money renting their house, you might see an additional resident every year starting to rent because the money they can make renting their house out far exceeds what they're paying here.
Sorry, John.
So I agree with your caution in moving a long way from the status quo. And I feel that not because of me, but because of the survey, right? It's, as you say, I mean, the overall, I interpret the preponderance of responses to say maintain it is, don't mess with it too much. And so I think in order to find more accessibility for more higher, better use for other people, we can encroach on that a bit. But I think our plan needs to be one of increments and probably a direction of travel that will take 10. I mean, when did the CISF get in? Like the building's going up now. That was in the that was in the first plan, land use plan that came after the 1994 workshop. So anyway, that's, I guess, in my mind, I'm interpreting that pace of change with the exception of the bathroom and the electricity.
I think the compromise between the number of sites and the revenue and the community is the site size too, considering site size.
And policies, it's not just the number, as we talked about. It's sort of, people talked a lot about the different kinds of decks and people bringing their own, I mean, there's number of cars, we can really think about the kind of place that we want to have for everyone having a good experience, the campers having a good experience, and the people who are visiting as well.
Since you bring that up, we are, I like the idea of it being a public park and having a park camping experience. And when you start talking about decks and multiple cars, it becomes a mobile home park.
No, it
It
doesn't.
is, yeah, it does. It becomes.
It's not a mobile
People are
home park.
living there
It's
for 4
seasonal.
months. Yeah, but that's the impact that it has on showing up there and wanting to use it as my public park.
Well, I guess what we're trying to do is find that, and I think we're already making tremendous progress of finding ways to make it feel like the community park that it is.
Right.
That has a campground in it. And we can have policies to shape the kind of campground, but I think that the community has told us for the most part, and I believe that we want to have a campground. We want to have RVs. We want to have the opportunity for people to come for a season. We can talk about the policies of whether we want it to be transient or generations of families coming and staying and having a deck, what kind of deck, those kinds of things. But I think we're trying to find a way to have all of those things.
Just out of pure curiosity, are there other campgrounds that have decks that are allowed, or is that like very unique to
I don't
Fort
know.
Getty?
Maybe.
I've just never seen it before.
No, I don't think anything should show.
And when did that like start happening?
Probably from the beginning. It's been a loosely governed sort of
Okay.
thing, yeah. At some point, I do want to talk about, it doesn't have to be today, but where we think or how we demarcate the beginning of Fort Getty, because people have been talking about it as when you go through the pavilion and when you go through the planters, whatever you call those, the pillar things that are the truly historic
Yeah.
things, but it actually begins where the gatehouse is, and I feel like we need to demarcate that a little bit more.
I've never.
Good signage, so.
There, I have thought about that. There is no like big Fort Getty sign. It's a little green one, or yeah, blue. Right.
And you know, what might be able to type of signage that
Yeah.
would be most appropriate for both the entrance and when they leave. Thanks for visiting, come again, something that really says, yes, this is a public area. This is not a private RV park.
Well, so I think part of our work is defining all this. Like, I've never thought though about the border, like the entrance to the park being where it is. I don't know. I just think you enter it when you go past the gatehouse.
Directional signage that says.
Yeah,
here's
not too
this.
much signage.
But the users, the pedestrians, though, when they're using the park, they're using Fort Getty Road too. And then if you're in, a camper and you want to go to the beach, like Fort Getty Road becomes that kind of extension of, if you were to walk to it or, right. So I don't know. I just, yeah. It's a little blurry, but I
Yeah.
think defining some of these things.
Just one point on your new map and putting that road up along the Battery. The concept sketch. Sure. I think it only dawned on me halfway through the conversation that you've put that new road pretty close to the Battery. And there's right now.
A new road that you're putting there?
We're suggesting, we're talking about eliminating exterior. This is a fairly awkward set of transitions, these lines in here. So we're looking at, since you see the shape here, it's a brain, concept of brain around.
Okay,
It's
leave.
not exactly the same footprint, and I think it has to be watch for that.
That's my point, is that I think we need enough open space to walk up through there. It's kind of tent camping now, but I think maintaining more of that green space along, to the south between the open RV land or parkland and the battery. Would be my suggestion.
You mean on the north side of the battery than rather than the south side of that?
I'm sorry, on the, no, on the south.
You-
I'm sorry, north of the battery, south, yeah.
North of the battery. Yeah.
Right, so you can see, you go out there.
Just
When as this comes in.
Yeah.
Then the number, the yield.
I know.
Starts to change, and so, you start to then to consider how to break this kind of perimeter, and maybe that's what happens is we look at terracing these and adding, RVs to the site as we're trying to, be above the 60 or the 65. We don't want to pinch this middle, because we want to explore the middle as sort of more public opportunity. And that's just a balancing, I think, as we get into a tighter layout, and what the field is in terms of space, so where this road sort of works best, and maybe it'll.
So anything else on anybody's mind at this moment that you really want to talk about today? So where do we go from here? Because I think we have a lot of great concepts, and then I know we probably all have other things that we want to get your advice on, like parking, traffic flow, the ramp, users, et cetera, the beaches. How do we go from here?
I think we stay on this because this is the core. There are significant challenges, in other areas, but they'll flow out of this process. This is sort of land use and circulation, and if we decide to move roads, because roads have a huge impact to the adjacent uses. So getting closer on this, I think, is where, I don't know if you need us back in 2 weeks or 3 weeks if you want us to join.
When you say on this, when you say closer on this, what do you mean?
Well, I think taking something that's less than, more than 50, right, and seeing what that layout looks like. I'm hearing we're not really considering tents here any longer. Is that a fair takeaway?
Right? Any thoughts on that?
No, I like moving the fence
Okay.
to that other spot.
I'm good on that.
What the numbers, we
Yeah,
can get to that later, but
Great.
the idea of pulling them down and.
Yeah.
Again, in this scenario, somebody could envision tents. Who knows, but I think.
Tents are easy.
The gestural move is let's to
great.
take this use and consolidate it here, let's take this use and consolidate it.
Yeah.
Middle, and then see where that takes us. So I think we have good marching orders, which sort of an updated version of this.
Yeah.
And these are concept level, just kind of massive uses, but then we'll start to track dial this in. To move towards like a landscape block master.
Right. Because I am just conscious of having us, this is a really critical piece of it because so much comes from this, but I really want to think about the other amenities that make this the community park, and that people know that we're talking about those things as well. We're not just talking about, it's an important piece, the RVs, the tent camping, but the bigger whole is all of Fort Getty, and what are the proposals that we're going to put forward to make it feel more like a community park from people in Jamestown. With camping, yeah.
I mean, you were talking earlier about like wanting to emphasize some time on policies and thinking about policies.
Yeah.
I think that grows out of priority, your priorities, right? And the priorities are reflected in terms of the land use. We talked about this land use pattern, talked about this, for a couple of meetings, sort of this land use pattern, the priority is renting out, and having this be RV space. Now we're talking about consolidate that, maintain and create green space for the public. So I think you're working through sort of identifying those priorities graphically in terms of the plan and the land use, and then that's going to flow to the next level of discussions. I think.
If I may. So you have encroached on the Toussard piece by making the road now south. If the desire is to utilize the landscape views and the means in which the land moves up and around, why wouldn't you consider keeping the RVs away from that? You've gone south with the RVs. Why wouldn't you come back into that last lot that is to the north with RVs, those 2 lots there that are above CISF, and move most of what you've gone south with back into that area so that you open up the center of the park with all of that landscape nuance. Instead of moving the RVs south, move them north so that the two-side area opens up to a larger extent.
Yeah, maybe it's definitely something
Yeah.
we could look at, and maybe that's where it talks about alternates.
Yeah.
Because, again, coming out of the last discussion.
Yes.
What can we find if we?
Because I struggle to imagine how that space is now used. It's just a big open lot that is.
We want to open some of it, right?
No, but so would the two-side area.
Yeah,
Be
right.
open and I believe potentially more inviting.
You know, to your point, Ken, you can connect above the pavilion, which is, you know, you can
Yes.
use it for the pavilion,
Yes.
rented, but it's not included, it's
Yes.
just an open space.
Yes.
Now you're taking.
You've almost doubled, you've grown that significantly.
Kind of centralized.
Right.
And you're, and that's where the best views are.
Right.
You know, elevation wise, I see what you're saying.
Jim, that's an excellent suggestion and a great challenge. I think the last meeting we talked about things like, you know, the ability to have an open air concert and using that slope, that down slope as a natural quasi amphitheater. But I think that the idea of coming up with alternative visions for the open space we could create, I mean, we like that because it was a downslope. It has southerly breeze. It would carry, well, see, the problem with the southwesterly breeze actually carries whatever music back up to the north, not to the audience. Here, it would do exactly the opposite, right? You'd have your little thing. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in that suggestion. Eric, I don't know how comfortable I am completely disconnecting how we deal with the congestion at the boat ramp and the parking on the whole eastern edge of the Fort Getty Road with what are we doing with the campers, right? I feel like we at least need to have 1 or 2 feasible solutions for those things before we would land any other decision, you know, because those are, I mean, I think those are significant pain points.
Talk about I think the challenges are operationally the conflicts. It's not going to change. In fact, it's going to be all the time. With the pedestrians, we have children, we have a paddle with the kayaks and so on. I think thinking about this corner, thinking about how circulation works, is there an opportunity, and we haven't studied this in detail, is there an opportunity to maybe create more of a turnaround in this landscape within Island that what we call like a streetscape project, an area of refuge, pedestrian refuge. So instead of crossing 85 feet of pavement, there's a center point that is green that provides a place for pedestrians to wait as the trailers and trucks turn and finish across this snag, which is where people. If not, if there's not people that turn around and move here, then the circulation pattern is somewhere up the site. That's one of the reasons why, at least in the scheduling versions, I think most sort of the people trailers probably be able to circulate out and around, maybe the parking can be addressed in some edges or something, parking probably will continue along that edge just because of some of the other pressures. But there may be a way to kind of integrate with some of the questions you asked, or circulation, you can flush that out. You know, what I'm saying or conceptualizing is there's some opportunity to address this as a space that's sort of self-contained at this campus of the park that allows for the movement of the boat trailers, the movement of people through. Space in the center would be able to be green and work at organizing so better clarity as to how what the size is and how it moves out of something about to look at. I think also see this pretty pronounced pinch point along this edge. through there. And so we've commented, let's pull the RVs back, we push it city, push it south. Look at it. What if the RVs can project more and more? I think we still want to pay attention to how can we sort of green up maybe this a little bit and make it easier for the public to walk on the outshore side of whatever road is there. And then they just be realigning from that curve or something.
Where you drew that circle for parking or turnaround, how close is that to the plot of land that the sailing program has access to as overflow parking? Because they're entitled to it, so. Yeah.
Yeah, there could be enough room to have a turn. We'd have to look at the radii of the trailers and make sure that that works.
Do you separate the RVs from the boats and trailers in terms of say circulation?
Yeah, I think that may happen anyway, right? I don't know if we've experienced, I think they sort of may come in. You know, I'm sure you so
when people have boats.
yeah, with RVs.
The RVs going very.
So generally, I mean, the RVs are coming in, parking, and that's it. So, yeah, it depends on where their sites are. They're coming in, their sites over there, they come on this way. There may be a couple RVs that have a tricky site and they have to come in from a certain angle, you know, it's all different, but generally they're not coming in over.
When you design it, you design it so that you really understand what you're gonna have. Maybe that separates some of the boat trailer traffic from the other traffic.
That's interesting because like there's not really much trailer traffic. You're saying because they come in and they stay, right? But I didn't think about that, right? So if we were to have more of the short-term rentals or short-term, right, occupants, right? Boat, yeah. Boats and trailers.
But just separating them to parts, it's the RVs. Did you have a big
You have the challenge in the mornings with children being dropped off. And I wondered whether a road just to the west that runs parallel with the inbound road on its way to the boat ramp, just to the west of CISF property, that becomes a one-way and a circle about, so that this last segment here, from here to here, is one way.
Okay. I know. You must have been thinking about this.
The one piece that you know about is the Ashland footprint there is wastewater, the sanitary issue there.
Yep.
So I think that's physically a limitation in terms of regrading and providing access. I think at that point we'd be realistically
Close to where you were.
You just
Yep.
keep that.
You know, somewhere.
Maybe you keep that road.
If you move the RVs north, that road would still be necessary anyway to bring trailers in. And that becomes your one-way there.
There's another option possibly, and that is this lot that is supposed to be for CISF parking. We could drop a road on the other side of it and make the one way that way. Yeah. This CISF parking way to plan it, I'm in here. And, where are you supposed to just carry on? I mean, I guess
Just leave what you've got there.
If you want to keep, well, I guess we're not having any RVs there, but we want that.
Well, I do think we have to think about traffic flow. Those are like on the list of things that we need to talk about beyond what's here. And I know you have roads, so that affects it, but we do need to talk about traffic flow, obviously because of CISF and safety, but the increased use of that area, parking, storage, et cetera. So I think we've had great progress today. So thank you. Thanks everybody for bringing great ideas, and thank you for continuing to keep us on track. So what do you think about, I know that Ed looks at me every time we want to have a workshop, but we need another workshop. So, okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I do think we should talk about parking and beaches.
Me too.
Yes,
I
right.
think we need to.
We need to. Yeah. Yeah.
And if you feel like there's certain momentum that we're attaining now, then.
I mean, I think we've had momentum and we've gelled around enough things. We may have to reiterate or iterate on some of them, but I think at this point we need to kind of keep moving. All right. So is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
It's just the look.
It's not my place.